Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I want you to imagine, just for a second, spending 17 years of your life failing at the exact same goal.
That sounds honestly miserable.
Right. I mean, you sacrificed your body, your relationships, your comfort, and you keep failing. But then, on your sixth attempt, you finally push past every previous limit.
Okay, so you're making progress.
Exactly. You are standing at 8,595 meters above sea level. You look up, and the finish line is literally 250 meters away.
Which, I mean, on flat ground, that's what, a 2-minute walk?
A 2-minute walk, but you are suffocating in the death zone. Your body is basically shutting down, and you have to turn around.
Oh, wow. That is brutal.
So how do you walk away from that and not just, quit forever?
Well, I mean, for most of us, walking away at that exact moment would permanently break our spirit. The sheer psychological weight of being that close to the summit of Mount Everest and having to abandon it is just staggering.
Yeah.
But the man who did turn around that day, Tenzing Norgay, he didn't break. He actually came back a year later.
And that, the psychological mechanics of why he came back and how he operated under that unimaginable pressure, that's the focus of our deep dive today.
Yeah, we're unpacking this really fascinating document today. It's titled, What a Borderer Can Learn from Tenzing Norgay.
Right, and the mission here isn't just to recount some old mountaineering triumph. We are looking at how the epic pursuit of the highest point on Earth serves as a surprisingly practical survival guide for your everyday life.
Yeah, specifically in any high-pressure shared community.
Exactly, because if you've ever lived in a crowded boarding house or a college dorm or maybe worked in a super intense startup, you know that you are essentially roped to the people around you.
It's a brilliant psychological reframing, honestly. We are treating a shared living space not just as, like, a room full of people, but as a miniature expedition.
A miniature expedition. I love that.
Yeah. And to understand the rules of that expedition, we really have to look at Tenzing's origins because they just completely defy the standard metrics of success.
They really do.
So he was born around 1914, though the exact date is actually lost to history because the Sherpa community in his birthplace didn't keep written birth records.
Right. No paperwork at all.
Right. He grew up in the Khumbu region as a high-altitude yak herder, living literally in the shadow of the mountain Tibetans and Sherpas called Chomolungma.
The Holy Mother, which the West eventually mapped and decided to name Everest.
Precisely. So he was the 11th of 13 children. His given name was Namgyal Wangdi, but a head lama actually advised changing it to Tenzing Norgay.
Which means wealthy and fortunate follower of the teachings, right?
Exactly. And he was briefly sent to a monastery, but the monastic life just, it couldn't hold him. He was irreversibly drawn to the foreign climbing expeditions that were starting to pass through his world. He wanted to be on the mountain.
So let's look at his intellectual toolkit when he finally joins those expeditions, because this is where the source document throws just a massive curveball.
It really does.
If you are navigating an academic or highly corporate environment today, success is almost entirely based on your written record.
Oh, absolutely. Your exams, your resume, your emails, everything.
Yeah, everything is text. But the document points out the staggering detail about Tenzing. He never learned to read or write, not a single word in any language.
Which, by the standards of modern institutional environments, that is the ultimate presumed disadvantage.
It's like starting a marathon with your shoelaces tied together.
Yes. You would assume someone lacking basic literacy couldn't possibly manage international logistics. Yet Tenzing possessed this immense, highly developed alternative intelligence.
Right.
He couldn't read a map or a cargo manifest, but he spoke Sherpa, Tibetan, Nepali, Hindustani English, and several other dialects.
Wait, I really want to pause on the mechanics of that. How does an illiterate person become a hyper-polyglot and run complex logistics?
It's wild, isn't it?
It is, because you can't just download a language app or read a textbook. It requires a terrifyingly sharp memory and this profound ability to read people instead of paper.
Exactly.
He had to be entirely present in every single interaction, picking up vocabulary through pure immersion, reading body language, tone, intent.
That is exactly the mechanism. His intelligence was entirely spatial, relational, and observational. He built this capability by living in the melting pot of Darjeeling and just throwing himself into the center of these massive, chaotic expeditions.
Wow.
And Tenzing would eventually spend 22 years as the director of field training at the Himalayan Mountaineering Institute. He earned the total trust of Swiss, British, and Indian officials, not because he had a degree, but because his pattern recognition regarding human behavior and mountain weather was virtually flawless.
See, if you bring that into a modern shared environment like a boarding house or a project team, it fundamentally redefines what competence looks like. We put so much stock in measurable output.
We really do.
But the source text makes it clear intelligence isn't just about exam results. There's always that student or colleague who might, struggle with the written material, but they are the absolute social glue of the room.
Oh, totally. They are the ones who can de-escalate a tense conflict just by reading the room perfectly, or who naturally organize a chaotic situation without needing a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
That is the intelligence of presence. Academic and technical skills matter enormously, of course, but navigating complex social friction with empathy is a profound capability that tests just cannot measure. It is the exact type of intelligence that earns universal trust.
And Tenzing's unique intelligence was tested over nearly 2 decades of grueling, repeated failures. Let's map out this timeline because the sheer volume of setback it's hard to comprehend.
It really is.
So he gets his start in 1935 at age 19 on a British expedition, and he isn't even drafted for his skill. He gets a spot by sheer luck because another porter failed a medical exam.
He was simply in the right place at the right time with the right attitude.
Right. So he goes up the mountain. They fail. He returns in 1936, fails, 1938, fails again, 1947, another failure.
That's relentless.
Which brings us back to that visceral moment we started with, the 1952 Swiss expedition. Tenzing and his climbing partner, Raymond Lambert, push higher than any human being ever has. They hit 8,595 meters, just 250 meters from the top.
And to understand the physical reality of that moment, you really have to understand the death zone.
Yeah, break that down for us.
So above 8,000 meters, there is literally not enough oxygen to sustain human life. Your cells are dying faster than your body can regenerate them.
That is terrifying.
It gets worse. Digestion stops, your blood thickens. Every single step requires 10 to 15 ragged breaths.
So that 250-meter gap isn't a casual stroll across a football field. It is hours of excruciating agony.
Exactly.
But they are completely out of supplemental oxygen. They are freezing, hallucinating from hypoxia, and they make the call to turn back.
Yeah, they do.
Now, I have to challenge the standard motivational narrative here, because when your own biology is shutting down and you've spent 17 years chasing this one thing, human instinct practically screams at you to accept defeat.
Oh, for sure.
Quitting at that point makes complete biological and psychological sense. Doesn't returning to the mountain kind of border on pure delusion?
Well, if his motivation had been purely egotistical, like if he just wanted to conquer a rock for the glory, then yes, returning would be delusional stubbornness.
Right.
The ego shatters under that kind of biological trauma. But the source document highlights a completely different psychological mechanism at play here. Tenzing didn't view the 250-meter shortfall as the universe rejecting him.
Oh, interesting.
He viewed it simply as a gap still to be closed. And he could maintain that perspective because of his relational attachment to the goal.
Because he actually loved the mountain itself.
Precisely. In his autobiography, he described Chomolungma not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as something, quote, warm and friendly and living.
Wow.
Yeah. He affectionately compared the mountain to a mother hen with the surrounding peaks as chicks under her wings.
That is such a beautiful image.
It is. And when you approach a massive challenge with reverence rather than aggression, failure doesn't destroy your identity. You are willing to absorb the setbacks.
Right.
It leads to his famous mindset before his final return, where he said, 6 times I climbed the mountain. The 7th time, I tell myself I cannot fail.
That reframes the entire concept of perseverance for anyone listening. When we face a 250-meter gap in our own lives, a rejected application, failing to make a team, maybe a brutal academic quarter, the standard advice is this hollow never give up.
Yeah, just try harder.
Exactly. But Tenzing's story offers something much more mechanical and useful.
Because true perseverance is not just blindly throwing yourself at a wall again and again. It is returning to the challenge armed with the specific knowledge extracted from the previous failure.
Yes.
Tenzing and the Swiss team learned exactly how equipment behaved at 8,500 meters. They learned about the oxygen flow rates required.
So if you're a student who gets a terrible grade, you shouldn't just try harder next time.
No, you should treat it as a 250-meter gap. You analyze the failure, you adjust the specific mechanics of your studying, and you close the gap.
But to finally close that gap on his 7th attempt in 1953, Tenzing couldn't do it alone. He needed a partner. And the physics of how he solidified his partnership with Edmund Hillary is, I think, arguably the most important lesson in this entire deep dive.
Oh, absolutely. The crevasse incident.
Yes.
It occurs during the lead up to the final 1953 summit push,
Yeah.
and it just perfectly encapsulates how trust is forged in extreme environments.
So for anyone who doesn't know, a crevasse is a massive hidden fissure in a glacier. They can be hundreds of feet deep, often covered by a thin, deceptive layer of snow.
Super dangerous.
Incredibly dangerous. And Hillary is a huge guy, over 6 feet tall, wearing heavy gear, and he steps onto a weak snow bridge. It collapses. He is instantly in free fall, plummeting into the ice. Let's look at the physics of this, because a falling human body accelerates at 9.8 meters per second squared.
Yeah, the force on the rope connecting him to Tenzing is about to be violently immense.
Huge. And if Tenzing hesitates for even a fraction of a second, or if his technique is slightly off, the momentum will violently yank him into the crevasse as well.
But Tenzing doesn't hesitate. He executes a flawless self-arrest.
He just dives right into the snow, drives the pick of his ice axe deep into the ice, and throws his entire body weight over the shaft to anchor the rope. I picture it like trying to catch a falling piano with a single handbrake.
That's a great way to describe it.
Right. The rope goes taut, cuts into the ice, and Hillary is left dangling over the abyss, entirely dependent on Tenzing holding the line.
And Hillary later noted that Tenzing performed this with such immediate, reflexive competence that it defied belief. Tenzing didn't have to pause to consider his own safety or calculate the risk. His body simply reacted to protect his partner.
That is the ultimate proof of character, because in a split second of terror, whatever is truly at the core of your personality comes out.
Yeah.
And Tenzing's core was pure, unhesitating care for the person attached to his rope. He wasn't thinking, oh, if I save the lead climber, he'll definitely pick me for the summit team.
No, there's no time for that. It was deep-seated muscle memory.
Right.
And that is the exact reason Hillary chose Tenzing for the final summit push. Because when you are heading into the death zone, you don't care about a person's formal credentials or their bravado at base camp. You care about what they do when the snow bridge collapses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Character isn't forged in grand public speeches. It's built through years of prioritizing the collective over the individual until selflessness becomes an automatic reflex.
Translating that to a communal living space or a collaborative workspace, it completely changes how we view reputation. You don't build trust by being the loudest voice in the seminar or by making sure everyone knows how hard you worked on a project.
No, not at all.
Trust is built in the totally unglamorous, invisible moments.
It's the student who notices a roommate quietly spiraling into anxiety and steps in to help before the breakdown happens.
Yeah.
It's the team member who takes on the tedious organizing work without demanding public credit. It is holding your temper and staying steady when the entire group is stressed and panicking. That consistency is the currency of trust.
And that selfless character, that absolute mutual trust, culminated at 11:30 a.m. on May 29, 1953. Tenzing and Hillary navigate the final, terrifying knife-edge ridge, step up, and finally reach the top of the world.
It gives me chills just thinking about it.
It's incredible, but Tenzing's reaction to winning the ultimate prize defies everything modern culture tells us about how victory should look.
It really does. Because we are deeply conditioned to expect the performance of dominance. The raised fists, the chest thumping, the aggressive planting of the flag to claim the territory.
Right, the victory dance. But after 19 years of obsession, endless physical trauma, and the heartbreaking near miss just a year prior, Tenzing stands at the summit, and there is no shouting.
None.
He doesn't strike a triumphant pose. He simply kneels in the snow. He digs a small hole and buries an offering of chocolate and biscuits.
A profound gesture of gratitude to the mother goddess, rooted entirely in his Buddhist faith. He wasn't conquering Chomolungma. He was thanking her for granting him safe passage.
Then there's the issue of the summit photographs, which is just fascinating. Edmund Hillary takes his camera out and snaps a picture of Tenzing standing at the summit, holding his ice axe with the flags flapping in the wind.
One of the most iconic photographs in human history.
Definitely. But there is no photograph of Edmund Hillary at the summit.
Wait, really? None?
None. Why? Because Hillary declined to have his picture taken, and Tenzing didn't force the issue. He respected his partner's boundary with characteristic gentleness.
Which is astonishing, considering the absolute geopolitical frenzy that erupted the moment they descended.
Oh, it was madness.
The entire world media, politicians from Britain, India, and Nepal, they all demanded to know one thing. Who stepped onto the summit first?
They just had to know.
They were desperate to assign individual glory. Was it a victory for the British Empire or a triumph for the local Sherpa?
I can imagine the pressure to claim that glory was immense. The financial incentives, the national pride.
The pressure was relentless, but both men refused to play the game. Tenzing's consistent, unshakable position was simply, "We climb together."
Wow.
He found the question of individual precedence to be entirely missing the point of mountaineering. To him, the summit belonged entirely to the partnership. Neither of them could have crossed that final gap without the other.
Which brings us to the concept of the silent summit for anyone living in a high-pressure community. Genuine achievement, the kind that takes years of unseen effort and heavy reliance on others. It speaks for itself.
It does.
You don't need to fiercely guard your credit or announce your every win to make it real.
True humility in a shared environment, it's not pretending you didn't achieve something great. It isn't false modesty.
Right.
True humility is the accurate, grounded recognition that your individual achievements are entirely built on the invisible contributions of others. Your tutors, your housemates who gave you quiet time to study, your colleagues who picked up the slack.
It also means you can celebrate someone else's success in your dorm without immediately treating it as a yardstick to measure your own failures against.
Exactly.
Tenzing shared the absolute peak of human recognition, and it cost him nothing, but it earned him a legacy that transcends mountaineering. Time magazine eventually named him one of the 100 most influential people of the 20th century.
A man who couldn't read a single word, but who understood the mechanics of human trust better than anyone.
If we synthesize the vast scope of this story, the overarching metaphor of this deep dive becomes really clear. A boarding house, a dorm, an office. These aren't just buildings. They are miniature expeditions.
They absolutely are.
You are living in incredibly close proximity with people of wildly different backgrounds and capabilities. You are facing the daily friction of communal life, periods of intense exhaustion, and the pressure of shared goals.
And Tenzing provides the specific operational principles for surviving that environment. Perseverance isn't just trying hard. It's returning with specific knowledge. Partnership isn't just networking. It's building the reflex to protect the person next to you. Humility is recognizing the team in the victory. When a community collectively operates on those principles, the environment shifts from a pressure cooker into an engine that elevates everyone.
It fundamentally changes the objective. And it leads perfectly to the source text's most powerful takeaway. The summit is not the point. The point is who you become on the way up.
That is so well said.
Tenzing Norgay became one of the great human beings of the 20th century, long before he ever set foot on that final ridge. The summit simply gave the rest of the world a vantage point to see the character he had already built.
The character was forged in the freezing darkness of the failures, not in the sunlight of the summit.
The darkness of the failures. That actually brings us to a final thought for you to mull over as you head back to your own team or dorm or massive project today.
Yeah, what is it?
Well, history rightfully remembers Tenzing Norgay for the one day he reached the top.
Yeah.
We celebrate the 1953 victory. But if character is truly built entirely in the struggle, if trust is forged only when the snow bridge collapses, what if Tenzing's 6 agonizing, quote-unquote, failed attempts were actually his greatest personal triumphs?
Oh, that's deep.
It leaves you wondering, doesn't it? When you are standing at your own 250-meter gap, when you fall painfully short and the instinct to quit is overwhelming, are those moments of failure actually the exact mechanisms forging you into the person capable of finally reaching the top?